Okay, I'm here with John McCauley. He's my second guest on the podcast. Welcome, John.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so today we're going to talk about a few different topics. We're going to talk a little bit about schools in Ontario and what's going on with that situation. We're going to talk about some sports as well, particularly football, and then we're going to finish off with concussions. So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you know about the schools and what they're doing in response to the
Yeah.
pandemic?
So I'm actually a certified teacher, and so I'm on a supply list right now. So I've had to go through all the training that you need
Mhm.
to deal with COVID. So basically, what I can tell you is that we put like a great amount of effort into ensuring that our schools are as safe as they possibly can,
Right.
and that every staff is trained on it, and that like there's no possible way for somebody to enter the school without a mask on. Like there's no possible way for somebody to enter rooms without sanitizing. Like we have monitors in the hallways to ensure these things.
Is it to
Ensure.
a certain age that they have to wear a mask, right?
I believe it's, yeah, I can't be 100% sure, but I think it's like what, 4 or 5 years old, or is it 3 years old?
I think it goes by grade. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like it's first or second grade, somewhere around there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and like I'm predominantly high school, so I don't really
Okay.
deal with that
Yeah.
as much with the ages. But I guess as a supply, I would come in to the elementary schools.
Right.
Um, so yeah, other than that, I would say like there is also a different rule. So all teachers have to have a specific medical mask. Preferably, they will walk in and grab a brand new mask every single day that they come into the school system.
So
So
they
they'll be at
supply
the
them?
entrances. Yes,
Okay,
the
cool.
masks are supplied for teachers, which is
Nice.
great because
Yeah.
then you have no outside exposure. And then, like I said, immediately sanitize after everything that you touch, sanitize as soon as you walk in a classroom, you leave a classroom.
What
And
do you
then,
use to sanitize? Just like the Lysol wipes kind of thing, or
well, it's a spray. It's a
a
spray to
spray?
sanitize usually,
Okay.
or what is that? I don't know the exact brand, but it would be the 99% bacteria,
Yeah.
just a gel type
Disinfectant spray.
disinfectant.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. But
It's
yeah,
all the same, right? More or less, just
yeah,
different brands.
kills the bacteria. And then there are capacities, so like capacities in the washroom. So I believe it's only like a certain amount of people allowed in the
Yeah.
washroom. So you can't just like leave the classroom and go. And then there's kind of like the notifying of a hall monitor once somebody leaves the classroom to
Mhm.
bring them to the washroom, sort of like you can't go with a friend.
Are
And
the
then
hall monitors a new thing that they've introduced as a result of
yes,
COVID? Okay.
yes, yeah. So they have to. It makes sense. Like it makes sense to have the hall monitors because you can't leave a class unattended
Yeah.
as a teacher, and it also allows for like those rules to be enforced. Because if you just say like go to the washroom, who is to enforce that that student leaves their mask on? Who is to
Yeah.
enforce that they properly sanitize? Who is to enforce that you don't have a bunch of different students in the washroom at the same time?
It'd be nice to be able to trust the students, but I just heard, I think last night there was a party in Sarnia, about 100 kids on the beach, so you can't really
Yeah,
trust them to make the right choices all the time.
yeah, that's definitely been inconsistent, I guess. Like the like touristy areas or whatever will usually have a large number of people on the beaches,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's maybe because those are tourist areas, it's left alone a little bit unless somebody reports it, I guess. But yeah, we still have like full class sizes, so we haven't
Okay.
reduced our numbers. But like I said, everybody has to have a mask. The only difference is that the students don't have to have the same medical masks that the teachers have.
So what is the kind of mask that teachers have? What would it be?
It would just be your basic like medical. What is that? What is that called?
An N95? Is that what it would
N95.
be?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds about right. Yeah. So it's not like the crazy high tech ones and stuff. And
Yeah.
you can choose as a teacher to also wear a face shield if you want, but they're not mandatory.
Have you found that most teachers like to wear the face shield?
I actually haven't seen a teacher wear a face shield
Okay.
unless the next thing that I was going to mention, a student is in isolation. So if a student is showing symptoms, then they must be put into an isolation area, so like a classroom
Yeah.
that has nobody else in it, and then nobody can get within that 6 foot range. unless they have PPE on, which is personal protective equipment, and that requires basically like a hazmat suit, gloves over top,
Yeah.
the full gear, like the mask, the face shield, goggles. So like no interaction with that student, pretty much.
Okay.
Complete isolation.
The parents come
And
pick them up right away, and what's the process?
I believe it's like a certain amount of time, and then yeah, that student would have to be sent home. The process of sending them home, I would believe, would just be like in a cleared area where there's no interaction, and then ensuring that everything's sanitized around them and everything's sanitized that they've been in contact with so far.
Okay.
But like, I actually want to touch on something you said. Like, you would expect you mentioned that you said you would expect students to be responsible, and that I guess would make more sense at the high school level. But at the elementary level, you're dealing with kids who are like 3 years old.
Well, I would
All the way
expect
up
them
to
to
grade
not be
8, right?
responsible, honestly. Like,
So you would expect them to be not responsible.
just thinking back
You
to
would
when I
hope
was
they'd
in
be
high
responsible.
school, even, there's
Yeah.
tons of people who just make really dumb decisions all the time. And
Yeah.
I think that the younger people are, I guess, the more impervious they think they are to this disease, because it seems like it really doesn't have much of an impact on young people for the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different feel. So as a teacher in the past, I love to interact with my students, especially as a physical education teacher.
Yeah.
I love to demonstrate. I love to assist. So I'd say like, okay, like give me that basketball. I'll show you exactly what to do with it. And then if like a student need help with work, I like to come over to where their desk was to help them. But now things are differently because you have to have that 6 foot range. So then how do you demonstrate something? How do you like come over to assist a student?
Yeah.
You can't really do that. Like most of the schools have Chromebooks in them, so I guess the student could kind of like send you it or whatever. But
Is that new? Or is
it
that
depends
something...
on the school, but it is a thing that's becoming pretty popular and newer in the last couple of years. But it's like most students will be given a Chromebook, which is kind of almost like perfect for this time that we've already got these Chromebooks in play, because then you can actually avoid any breaking of that 6 foot like range. You don't really have to have like handouts handed in and stuff. Like you still do handouts, but it's like the process of collecting handouts is different now because you can't really have
limit the
in contact with that. It's more like, here's a handout to take home for yourself, right?
So they don't have to hand it back in necessarily. It's more just like homework, I guess you would say.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And then like however you want to submit that, like I imagine there would be a function that would allow you to kind of scan the handouts without actually interacting with them.
What about for students that maybe don't have access to the technology? Would they just be able to use the library?
Well, if the Chromebooks are in a school system, everybody would have a Chromebook. Like that's just like straight up.
So they can just do a Word document and do it that way.
Yeah, if they wanted to, or fill it out on pencil and then just scan it. If
everybody has access, though. That's what's important.
Yeah, that's kind of ideal. I know one of the biggest challenges was access to Wi-Fi, especially with virtual learning.
Yeah.
So I believe, I forget the exact company, and I don't know if it's in Canada. I guess it wouldn't be in Canada, but I know some companies have like attempted to like make it easier for people to have Wi-Fi in their homes and stuff with like a reduced rate or a certain amount of people getting free Wi-Fi and stuff like that.
Like a group rate, you mean, sort of?
Yeah, like kind of making it more affordable to have Wi-Fi, especially in these times.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we don't have that many companies doing that, that would be probably a good idea.
Internet can be expensive in Canada.
Yeah.
I guess we do have some of the highest rates from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Many people say that.
For sure. Yeah, so just kind of like to sum it up, like we are definitely doing everything we can in the school systems to ensure and prevent any kind of outbreak and ensure that everybody's following the rules.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of straight up. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me more about what's going on if somebody, like if there's an outbreak at the school, what would you do?
Oh, yes. If there was an outbreak at the school, I guess it would be kind of just like an outbreak anywhere. Like you would have to find out like the contact that was possible with everybody. And then I know there's a school in Ottawa that closed from outbreaks.
Was it an elementary school or a high school?
Yeah, I think it was a elementary school, Catholic elementary school, I'm pretty sure. But I think it would just be like an outbreak kind of anywhere that is in a business would just be like you have to shut that down. Like that school has to shut down, and then anybody who's been in contact or I guess to the extreme, every single person who's in the school would have to self-isolate.
Every
Right.
single person.
Depending on the kind of contact.
They
or
would do
the length
extensive
of the
contact tracing there, I would imagine,
time.
right?
Yeah, most
Yeah,
likely, yeah.
that's good. Yeah,
It is good.
I
Probably
noticed
testing and stuff.
a
Yeah.
lot of places now are doing kind of contact tracing measures. Like I recently went to a bar, and you have to sign in, like you
Yeah.
sign your name and everything. So that's a good idea, I think. Things like
Yeah.
that.
So they can trace it back, right? Like your number and everything. And if there's that outbreak, they can trace it back. And then
Yeah.
you have to. So what I've heard is that if you have tested positive, or if anybody's tested positive, then anybody within your circle you legally have to contact
Okay.
and inform them if you've had an interaction with them within that certain time period. So probably even 2 weeks before, like if you tested positive, you know what I mean? Like if you
Yeah,
had
it'd
contact with somebody 2 weeks before, you probably have to contact that person legally.
probably be a 14-day period, I'm assuming.
After that.
Yeah.
But there are the false positives. Like basically you get tested
I've heard about
and
that. Yeah.
and then like you go positive, and then later on you find that you actually don't have COVID. But at the
Yeah.
same time, everybody still has to be tested and then self-isolate until it's found out that you don't actually have it.
Yeah, and self-isolating can be a pain. I've had to do it a couple of times because I had a low-grade fever and I just wanted to play it on the safe side. It ended up being nothing. But yeah, that's how I ended up having to get tested twice.
Oh wow, twice.
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit on my last podcast. Like I said, the first time was a little more painful than the second time. I think like the nurse is actually the same nurse, I'm pretty sure, by some coincidence, and she must have gotten better at it from doing it so many times. I guess right now though the demand for COVID tests is pretty high.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah,
I've
heard that.
I recently went by there, the testing place, by the hospital, and there's actually like a lineup outside. So that was the first time I've seen that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. I've heard something like that, like somebody, because I think you have to kind of like call and book, and
Right.
I know somebody like booked or something in the London area, and then like they went to go and there was just like a crazy lineup.
London's really bad.
But what was crazy about this, like I guess not fact, this was told to me by my aunt, but she said they went, this crazy lineup was there, they left, never got tested, and then they got in the mail that they both tested positive.
See, how does that happen?
I don't even know.
How did they even?
Because they were never tested.
When
So
they
just
got
generically sent them a positive, saying that they both tested positive.
So they were sent there by a referral, right?
So they were sent there because they wanted to get tested.
Yeah, but they needed a referral from somebody.
I guess.
Right?
I don't really know. Yeah.
But they never checked in.
Never checked in. They were in line, and then they just left because they were like, "This is too big of a line."
And then they received a letter in the mail
saying that they both tested positive. Yeah.
So what did they have to do then? Did they have to self-isolate, I guess, by law?
Oh, I guess they would go and get tested again and be like, "What is this?"
Just to clear it up.
I
guess they would probably just have to self-isolate until they get those results to negate the original ones then, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how about job demand? What has the pandemic done for job demand in teaching?
Crazy job demand. We have a serious lack of supply teachers right now.
Yeah.
Like this is Ontario wide. This is multiple provinces have a lack of
the whole country
supply teachers, and I think it's more of also like it's not necessarily that we don't have supply teachers. It's just to fill the amount of absences that we'll experience due to somebody who's high risk. Say like there's a teacher who's high risk who can't work, who fills their position, right?
There's a lot of teachers who are pretty close to retirement, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
Who are in that vulnerable category, over 60 years old maybe.
For sure. And I know personally some people, well, I don't really know them, but I've looked at the jobs that have been available in the area, and I do know like 4 people who were actually hired as a long-term occasional, which is pretty much, so basically somebody will be on leave. So say somebody's on leave from September to December.
Yeah.
There's a list called a long-term occasional, LTO. And usually it's like people who have been supplies for a while will get these LTOs. But I know like 4 people who came right at a teacher's college and got LTOs because there are so many more LTOs. So there's a higher demand for jobs. And then you have to remember there's also virtual school. So there's like all your classes in the actual school, and then there's the classes for the virtual schools, like phys ed, social studies, like.
Who do they get to teach the virtual schools? The regular teachers, or do they find?
So it would be
teachers?
a long-term occasional also, the virtual
Really?
schools.
Okay.
So.
So a lot of opportunity for.
A lot of opportunity. I know.
Coming out of school.
Yeah, I didn't actually apply for any of the LTOs, but I pretty much like a lot of people. I didn't actually go to school in Ontario. I went to school in New Brunswick for Teachers College, but I know like. Yeah, a couple people who have gotten LTOs right at a teacher's college,
so
which is unheard of.
If you did sign up for the LTO, you potentially could be teaching an online class right now, basically.
Yeah, if you applied for the online.
Oh, so you specifically have to request the online class, so
yeah,
they don't
each
just
job
throw you in
posting
there.
Is separate. Yeah,
Okay.
It's not like you apply for like generic LTOs. So I'm on an OT, an occasional teachers list.
Yep.
So that's supply teachers and LTOs. So I would qualify for those jobs, but I still have to apply for an LTO and go through that process, a specific LTO.
Like an internal hire sort of process, maybe? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these postings would be available to anyone like who doesn't already work for the board that you work for? Is that how it would work?
Well, actually, most of them have been. I guess in the past, they weren't available, but I was able to see all the LTOs before I was hired.
Okay.
My voice always goes out when I talk a lot in one day.
You need some water?
I think I do.
Yeah?
Here,
no, it's all good. Use this. I haven't drank from it yet.
I've had so many calls today.
I've still got a good amount in here.
Oh, sweet.
I got enough to keep me going.
You want to grab another one?
No, it's all right. I'm good to go.
Okay.
All right. So, yeah, another thing that I wanted to touch on as well was professional sports. I know that we both like football. We used to play together in high school. So I stumbled upon a pretty interesting bit about the fake crowd noises. Now, you said you don't like them, right?
I just find them highly distracting,
to
be honest, because they're almost like too fake and like too exaggerated. Just the ones that I've noticed in Major League Baseball mostly.
Baseball.
It's just like the same loop, and then it's like, oh, this guy's just normal pitching. Like there's nothing intense going on, but like the crowd's like, yeah.
Super intense just for
I'm
a regular
like,
pitch. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. So what the NFL is doing, Vince Caputo, he's the vice president and he's the supervising sound mixer for NFL Films. Mm-hmm. They had this 4-year project where they were recording the sounds of every NFL stadium during the game. So they're getting, the complete range of sounds throughout a whole game, all of the highlights and all of the lows, all of the bad calls, all of the injuries. They're getting all of that information. And I guess for a while they didn't really know exactly what to do with it, I don't think. But now that COVID hit and they needed some way to generate these fake crowd noises over broadcasts, I guess they thought, well, maybe we can use it for this purpose. So they combined it with some kind of software that they use in video games to make like audio background more responsive to the player. And what you end up getting is a completely, I guess, unique and dynamic crowd sound experience that responds to every single play on the field, right? So, I mean, if it's 4th and 1 on the goal line and the home team's about to score, like the ambience in the crowd is going to be a lot louder than if it was just, 1st and 10 on their own 20. So it's going to be custom to each situation. Like they have people who are in NFL offices, so it's going to be league controlled in terms of the sound for the broadcasts. And they're going to be collaborating with the different networks on that. So that's going to be controlled by the league. The teams don't control that. But what the teams do control is they control the in-stadium sound. So there's not as much effort that goes into that. Basically, it's just kind of a generic sound. And the reason that they're doing that is to just simulate the play environment. So you don't want people to be hearing things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to hear. Like maybe they'll be able to listen in on the play calling or different adjustments better.
Yeah, for sure.
And that could give an unfair advantage, I guess, because that advantage normally wouldn't be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the idea behind it, is to keep it as realistic and as normal as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually have kind of strict limits on where the sound can be. So it has to be between, I think, 70 and 75 decibels. but again, that would be a separate audio track from the one that they're doing for the broadcast. So like the one for the broadcast, it's a lot more in depth. There's a lot more effort that's going into it. Now, I guess it was a little bit rusty just starting out because they didn't get a lot of opportunity to practice it. There was no preseason. So they were just expected to get right into it, try out this new thing that they were doing. But from what it sounds like, by Sunday night on that opening week, they started to feel a lot better about the final product that they were getting out of these dynamic crowd noises. So yeah, what do you think about that?
I think that's pretty cool. Like, I think it's like it must be like so annoying for the actual athletes because if they're doing like a specific crowd noise
Yeah.
there,
Well, they
that's
don't
just
hear
on
that.
a loop. Oh, they don't. I thought the athletes do. I thought I heard.
They just hear the regular one, I think, in the NFL, just the plain one, right? But
Yeah, which would be like just the same loop, wouldn't it?
the one that, yeah, I believe so. But so the one that's reacting, that's only
Yeah.
audible in the broadcasts.
So they're not having any reaction. They're literally just having like this same noise over and over again.
Basically,
Whereas at least we're having some kind of reaction to stuff. So like,
I think they're trying to add some other things too, like they do the PA announcements.
okay,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, 1st and 10 on the 30-yard line.
yeah,
Like that kind of stuff. I think they try to do that as well, just to.
spice it up.
They don't want to make it super boring for the players at the
Mhm.
same time. Like, it's a big change for them. They're used to going to packed stadiums,
Yeah,
having
right.
fans cheer on every play,
Yeah.
like, going crazy when they pull off some big play. And now, like,
Yeah.
I guess they're saying like it's really weird because it's almost like crickets.
Yeah, that would be really weird. It is kind of like I wonder if the NFL will kind of do exactly what the NCAA is doing with football because like they have fans at their games.
How many fans? Like, what kind
I
of
heard there was a game with
capacity?
like 25,000 fans, like on
That sounds like a
a
lot.
week or so ago. Yeah.
What's
Well,
the
there's a bunch of games
capacity?
today, but there's some 8,000. Well, depends on the stadium. Like I know the
Yeah.
biggest stadium in the NCAA is, I believe, Michigan Stadium,
Right.
the big house, and it's 110,000.
Oh man.
So you're not like if there's 25,000 there, what is
Yeah. No, that's fair actually.
25%.
That's actually pretty
something
good
like
then.
Yeah.
So maybe it was in a stadium of that sort of size.
Yeah.
I know there is a handful of NFL teams that are allowing partial audiences. Like Kansas City is one of them, I think, right? Miami, which is kind of funny because there's probably not that great of an attendance anyway. It's gonna look fairly normal
It's their
on,
best year yet.
on Sundays in Miami.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw something about that. It's like a comedian who I saw.
It's
And,
probably just a meme going around.
It was like I forget what he was impersonating like different head coaches, and I don't know if he impersonated the Miami head coach
Who do they
or
have?
if it might have been the Chargers, like the old Chargers, and basically, I don't know who they have, but the guy it was pretty funny because the guy was like impersonating the head coaches, and then he gets to like the Chargers head coach or the Miami head coach, and he's just like, wow, so COVID must have been around for like the last 3 years because we haven't had any fans show up. Like it was
God,
so
really?
funny.
Yeah. No, it really doesn't seem like a lot's changed with COVID there, for real.
No, definitely not.
Even with the reduced capacity. Maybe they're just using the reduced capacity as an excuse. And like, oh, see you guys, like,
yeah,
normally it would be full, but the only reason it's like this is because we can't have more people.
yeah, exactly.
You know, speaking of Florida, Tom Brady is a Buccaneer. It's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? It's very
It is
unusual.
weird. He definitely looks weird out there. Even seeing Cam Newton in a New England jersey I don't know what one's weirder, but both of
It's
them.
going to take some
look
getting
really
used to.
I think it's more weird to see New England without Tom Brady than it is
Yeah.
to see Tom Brady with the Buccaneers because they're just so used to that same quarterback with that. Well, until like his last 2 years, he wore that old fashioned like almost like shut helmet. Like he was just such a throwback. And then like Cam Newton's got like all the bells and whistles on. So
It's
it's
two
just
different
so
generations of football.
Yeah,
really.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and well, Tom Brady hasn't really had the best start in Tampa Bay. There's some speculation. Maybe that's because of the fact there wasn't a preseason, and he's getting into a new scheme, like with a new head coach, new team. So maybe he's just not used to it yet, and he just needs some time to get into the swing of things. But we talk about Cam Newton, and he doesn't he
Also
hasn't
didn't have
wasted
a
any time.
preseason, so
Yeah, he hasn't wasted any time getting going. Like
no.
he's starting off extremely strong. Now I
Yeah.
think one of the opponents was Miami, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I can't remember exactly.
I
Yeah,
believe so.
maybe. Yeah.
So I mean, let's not get too excited just yet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like the numbers he's putting up, they're pretty promising so
Yeah.
far. So just to give you an idea, so far he's got 71.4% completion percentage, thrown for 552 yards, which is pretty good.
In 2 games?
Yeah,
Wow, so almost 300 yards a game.
yeah, that's pretty
That's
good.
insane.
That's pretty good. He's on a good pace if he can keep that up.
Yeah.
Only one touchdown and one interception, but 4 rushing touchdowns already in 2 games.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. And his passing rating is pretty good. It's 96.8. It's nothing spectacular. Like it's not going to be in the top 5
Yeah.
probably, but it's very respectable.
Yeah.
Very respectable. And if you want to compare that to Tom Brady's start of the season, he's starting off with a 79.3 passer rating. He's got a 64.8% completion percentage, which is pretty standard for him actually. There's nothing really that unusual about that. He's got 456 yards so far, which isn't terrible, I guess. It's not too bad.
20 yards.
But what's unusual, I guess you could say, for him is the fact that he's only got 3 touchdowns and he's thrown 3 interceptions already in the season. I think one of them was a pick 6.
Wow. What I'd love to see is like how many passes he's thrown in comparison to Cam Newton, right?
That's a good question too.
Because
I didn't get
he
that
would be
stat.
throwing more passes than Cam Newton for sure because he's a pocket passer, whereas like Cam Newton's a dual threat quarterback. So like
He's
you're talking
already-
about 2 different guys. And I think that's why it's even more impressive is for like Cam Newton's stats is that as a dual threat quarterback, he's almost averaging 300 yards a game, which is insane.
And he's averaging about 60 yards rushing a game. Let me look here.
And 4 touchdowns. So it's not like he's like sacrificing on either side of the ball. And if you think about another really good dual threat quarterback, Russell Wilson, he's not putting up that kind of numbers in the air. Like it's very rare that Russell Wilson breaks 300 yards.
He's so reliable though. Like he plays with such precision.
Extremely reliable.
Like he's probably one of the most precise quarterbacks in the game. He
Yeah.
doesn't make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and that's because he had to be that good because there is that whole stigma almost like you can't have an undersized quarterback. So he had to be unbelievable in order to play in the NFL, right?
He came out with something to prove, you could say.
Yeah, it's like Kyler Murray's pretty unbelievable right now, especially rushing.
That's what I've heard. I've heard he's working his way into becoming an elite quarterback very quickly.
Yeah, he's making people look foolish out there when he runs the ball.
Yeah.
As does Lamar, but Lamar's not undersized.
No, he's a pretty big guy, isn't he? How tall is he?
He's got to be at least like 6'3", I'd say, maybe 6'2". Cam Newton's a giant. Cam Newton's a big dude.
He's what, 6'5", 6'6"?
Yeah, I don't know his exact like vitals, but yeah,
He's
definitely
big.
he's a big guy. But I would definitely say like why you're seeing Cam Newton in a way put up these stats is that Bill Belichick likes to protect his quarterbacks. So Bill Belichick gets a good offensive line, right? And that's why Brady lasted as long as he did, because he always had a good offensive line. So now you have Cam Newton, who took a lot of hits in Carolina.
6'5" sounds pretty big for a quarterback. I think he might only be like 6'1".
Yeah, but he's got a great O-line now behind him. Like if you watch a New England game, Cam Newton could cut the grass, shave his beard by the time he throws the ball.
Yeah.
You know, like that's how unbelievable the line is. So then you give that quarterback, and then it's also almost tailored more towards the New England. They have a lot of talent surrounding him, which is awesome. So then what's great about that is that before he had a lot of dependence on I have to run the ball, but now because he's surrounded by decent talent, that he can throw the ball, that dual threat thing, there's not as much pressure. People aren't actually overplaying him running the ball, which was a thing in the past. And then you're allowed to switch it up a bit. Like Bill Belichick must be just dancing because he's got a friggin' read option going. You know,
he
like
didn't
how
have that
awesome
with
is
Brady.
that? No, because Brady runs a 7:40, 7-second 40.
He's not getting anywhere fast on his feet.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's honestly like it was probably one of the best things that could have happened after Brady left was to pick up Cam Newton because it's kind of the new generation of New England in a
Yeah.
way.
And he's 31, but you can still get quite a few years out of a 31-year-old quarterback. I mean, Tom Brady's 43.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Cam Newton's going to play to 43. That's pretty unusual. That's like a bit of a phenomenon, you could say.
Yeah. I don't know if he will either because he suffered a lot more injuries than Tom Brady.
A lot of really good players retire young too. Like we
Yeah.
have Luke Kuechly who just retired. What, last season was
Yeah.
it? And he was
He was in
even
his
30 years
30s.
old?
I don't even know. Smart decision by him though, with the amount of brain trauma he probably has by paying middle linebacker.
He's a very
Take care of
active
himself.
player. Very active.
active.
Always
It would
seems
be
like a
sad
good
to
player.
not have him there in the league for sure.
Now you were talking to me a little bit earlier about Ryan Fitzpatrick and all the teams he's been on. Did you know that right now Ryan Fitzpatrick is getting paid more money than Cam Newton?
That's incredible. That's incredible. But
Yeah.
that's also the New England way. Like Brady, I remember, was getting paid something like $10 million a year, and
Okay,
Matt
yeah.
Stafford was making $30 million a year. Like things like that. And it's just like that's the Bill Belichick way. Like people want to play for him because they know he's going to make them champions. They
He's an
know he's
incredible
going to make
coach.
them the best they can possibly be. He takes average players and turns them into unbelievable players because he's an unbelievable coach. So people are willing to take that hit on their paycheck by playing for Bill Belichick.
You mentioned Danny Amendola as an example, right?
So what that would be is definitely it's very hard to see New England Patriots leave New England and do really well outside of New England. So it kind of makes you wonder,
The
like,
fan base, you mean?
not the fan base, like the players, you know what I mean? Like
Oh,
the players,
okay.
the
Okay.
players who leave New England usually, like, it's not consistent enough to say that the players stay good. So you'll have stars leave New England,
Yeah.
go somewhere else, do really well in New England, and then be like subpar or just disappear after they leave. So it kind of like brings up the question of, does New England make them stars? Because think about those guys who like nobody even knew. Like Danny Amendola, nobody knew of when he played until he played for New England.
That's true. He's
But
just a
he
mid-tier
is,
guy.
yeah, like he's one of the rare cases because he's actually like Detroit's probably number one receiver right now.
There's places that are kind of the opposite of that effect too. Like if you look at Cleveland, and you have players who were once regarded as elite, like Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah,
Who's
still
now-
still great players.
He is, of course, but I mean, he's not really getting anywhere near the opportunities he was at other points in his career. And I actually heard something today when I was looking into these stats that, maybe potentially in the future we could be looking at some kind of trade to New England. That would be pretty incredible. Imagine Odell Beckham Jr. and Cam Newton on the same team.
Maybe something else. That'd be a little too much.
A little too much? You think
Well-
they might make a Super Bowl run?
Yeah, I'd probably want to take a different guy than Odell. But I'm glad you brought up Cleveland because honestly, like watching Cleveland, they have no excuses. Like Cleveland is such a stacked team.
The
They have
talent's there,
two
man.
unbelievable running backs in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and then they have an unbelievable receiving core. They have unbelievable tight ends. They have a number one overall pick quarterback who has been nothing but disappointing in Cleveland. And
Yeah.
yet they don't do well. Like did they even make the playoffs last year? Like,
Pretty sure they didn't.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think there was obviously some blood or something for the Cincy game because Cleveland ended up winning that one, which was kind of interesting. I think it was the whole like controversy or the clash of like, is Baker Mayfield good enough because he was playing what's his name from LSU just started with Cincy, so there was a lot of questions about
Yeah.
Joey Burrow. It was there was a
Oh,
lot
you
of
mean
questions.
this season?
This is this season.
Yeah.
Cincy and Cleveland played, and Cleveland won. And like Joe Burrow had a decent game, but like Baker Mayfield was pretty great that game. And I think there was a lot of
Okay.
people, because there was like reporters who were all over like, this will prove if Baker Mayfield is washed up and everything because this new kid's in town and he's gonna do better than him and stuff.
What year is Baker Mayfield in now? How long has he been in the league?
I want to say 3
It's his
years,
third year?
maybe,
Or is this his fourth year going
I
into
don't know.
it?
I think this would be his 3rd year, but don't quote
Okay.
me on that because I just
Yeah.
want to say 3, but I also don't know if he was sat back a year. He did sit back for quite some time behind Tyrod I think it was Tyrod Taylor, wasn't it?
I
Who was
can't
with
remember. I can't
Cleveland
remember.
before Baker, and Tyrod was just as bad at that time. Um,
Yeah, he was kind of towards the end of his career. Is he still in the league, Tyrod, as a backup?
I don't know. I think so. I would definitely say I think the big thing with Baker is we're probably confidence because he is a star and he
Yeah.
has star potential, but it's a confidence thing. And if you get affected by all that like hit on you, like you needed to perform now, like you are the number one pick and everything, and that can really take a toll on you,
At
right?
least it's not another Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. It was almost. I don't know. We'll
It
see.
was looking like that.
Yet to come.
I
Yeah.
don't want to jinx it, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have some predictions for New England here, actually, and what I think Cam Newton is going to do for them. All right, so what I think they're going to do is let me just find them here. Oh, here we are. So I think they're going to finish 10-6. So they're going to go to the playoffs. I think they're going to get to the conference finals and they're going to lose. I don't know. Yeah, I definitely think they have enough talent there to get to the conference finals, but I don't know if they have enough talent to win because the AFC is pretty tough. Like you've got the Ravens, the Chiefs. They're obviously very strong teams, with the quarterbacks that they have leading the team.
Yeah.
So I think as far as stats go, he's going to have somewhere around 20 to 22 touchdowns, 12 to 15 interceptions, 3,400 to 3,600 yards passing, 61 to 65% completion percentage, and then 90 to 95 passer rating. So one of my predictions that I think would be a pretty crazy is I think he actually holds the season record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback at 14.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the start that he's had, having 4 touchdowns already in 2 games,
it's insane.
I think he's going to beat that record this season.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Unless
I think he's going to get 15.
Yeah,
but I mean, he could get injured. Like if he's going out every play, putting himself on the line like that, that is dangerous.
Well, he's got to play smart, and I do know Bill Belichick wants his players playing smart, right? Like usually in the past, he's been all about that. And I think that's the big change for Cam Newton is that in the past, Cam Newton was much of an individual. So Cam Newton was for Cam Newton. That's not how New England plays. That's not how Bill is for. You've noticed that too if you watch the current game so far. So that kid's going to be definitely like sliding when he needs to slide, like not doing dumb things so that he can Superman in the end zone or whatever, right?
Do you think we could see him put up his best numbers of his career potentially?
I possibly, if not this year, if he re-signs, because I think he's only a 1-year contract, right?
Yeah.
If he re-signs, I would
$7.5 million
say
is the most he could make.
I think it's all up to him and his head. Is he going to be okay with being the team player?
Yeah. I think he can do it.
I think so too.
Because when you look at his stats before his injury, they were starting to go back up a little bit. Like he dipped down for a couple of seasons, but then like the season before that injury, the stats looked a little bit better than the year prior. And then of course, what was his injury that took him out last year?
Was it a concussion related or was it like a knee related? Can't remember exactly. A lot of quarterbacks suffer the back one, so it could have been that. But he's had a couple big injuries, I think, in his career.
It left him
he tore his ACL or what it was, but yeah.
Left him in a really bad position, obviously negotiation wise, which is why he's getting paid so little right now. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
It's a tough spot for him, but at least he's still playing in the league.
Yeah,
I think that's what matters the most.
Yeah, I think something you and I talked about earlier, and I think is kind of like definitely fair to assume, and I imagine a lot of people are thinking about this too. But what will be the reaction if Tom Brady doesn't make the playoffs with the Buccaneers and has a terrible season, and then Cam Newton makes the playoffs, does well in the playoffs? I'm not saying wins the Super Bowl, but does well in the playoffs, has a stellar year. What will be the reaction of the media and all the fans? Will you see a bunch of Tom Brady fans go like, oh my gosh, Tom Brady was only good because of New England, Like, I get the age thing, but this will totally be a reaction. If Tom Brady goes there and underperforms and Cam Newton kills it, I firmly believe that the media and everything will say that Tom Brady was only as good as he was because he was under Bill Belichick and he was in New England. And that's how straight up it is. Like, I think people are,
that's been a debate
ruthless.
For how long has he been in the league? 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
It's been a debate for 20 years.
Yeah.
And he's got really good weapons, so he has no excuse. He's got Rob Gronkowski, who is literally...
followed him.
He's the person who he's thrown more touchdown passes than any other player in his career, and he's thrown touchdown passes to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then he also has Mike Evans,
who's
a really extremely talented wide receiver.
Yeah.
I made some predictions for New England too. So, I've got them finishing at 7-9. I think they're going to miss the playoffs, like we talked about.
New England or Tampa Bay?
Tampa Bay. See, what's funny is when I was looking up the stats, like I was trying to look up Tom Brady stats, I accidentally looked up New England at first.
Because you're just so used to it.
I kept having to. It kept messing with me while I was looking this up.
So Tampa Bay will go 7-9.
Yeah, this is for Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers. So I think Tom Brady's going to have somewhere between 18 and 20 touchdown passes, which is, I think, one of his lowest in his career for starting like a full season. I think he's going to have an all-time high for season interceptions. So I think you would have to throw 15 for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's going to have somewhere between 14 and 16. I think he's going to have between maybe 3,500 and 3,600 passing yards. And I think for the first time in his career, he's going to finish below 60% completion percentage.
Wow.
And then
I believe it.
75 to 79 passer rating, which is pretty poor, right? That's really not good. He's a little fun fact, though, about him. He's the oldest quarterback already in history to win a Super Bowl. So, I'm really not sure what he has left to prove at this point in his career. I think maybe he should have just retired, but... No, I can respect him for wanting to get out there and play the game still. I can respect that.
Yeah.
100%.
Could be endorsements. Who knows?
Maybe
he has to play to continue certain endorsements. Who knows?
Sponsorships.
But at the same time, he's obviously not all about the money. If he's had like a lower salary since he's been in the league. So, but I think definitely this year he's kind of, I don't know what his salary is, but I imagine it's pretty high. That's why he went to Tampa.
I'm not sure what his salary is either.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, interesting stuff. I believe that.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about some of our high school football experiences, we did play together for even before high school, like with the Cougars Youth League, right?
Yeah.
That was
Probably started grade 5.
Grade 5.
Stopped playing 5th year of high school was my last year of contact football, but we always played in the summer. So from I want to say grade 5 to grade 11. I don't know about you, but I'd always play 2 seasons. So I want to say grade 8 to grade 11. I was playing 2 seasons a year. So I don't know how many years. I think it works out to around 12 seasons total of football that I played, and you're pretty close to that too.
I started in grade 7. So I would just do the fall Cougars League for the first couple of years until high school. Or no, I think I did the summer league. So I probably had maybe 3 seasons of football under my belt before I got into high school. And then, of course, with high school, I would do the high school league with our team and then the Cougars team in the summer. But I started not to really like the Cougars as much as I got older. I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't as organized in the upper levels, like the more senior levels, as it was in the junior levels. We definitely didn't have the same success that we did in that 8th grade season. We almost made the playoffs, actually. I think we were just 1 win away, right? We were close, but even then, it was still a really fun experience. We got to go kind of all these different places around Ontario and just play football. I think the furthest we've ever gone for Cougars was Barrie, which from here is about a 4-hour drive, depending on the traffic. So that's pretty cool to go 4 hours away to play football.
Yeah, you can go pretty far. When it comes to high school leagues versus travel leagues, you're not going to get as much attendance, and you're going to get kind of flakes, I would call them, people who would flake at a practice or just show up for games. You're going to get that more in the summer league, because when it's in high school, everybody's already there. You know what I mean? There all day. Practice happens right after. It's very easy to get to. The games aren't crazy out of town. Stuff like that. There's no rides that need to be given. Then you go to summer and you're going, okay, all these kids who football is voluntary, right?
Yes.
So all these kids are now in dedicating their summer towards football when they could be maybe working more. They could be like having a good time with their friends. They could be traveling. They could be doing whatever.
Yeah.
So what you get is you usually get at the beginning of a season, you'll get around 30 kids on a summer football team, right?
Okay.
And then that'll narrow down.
30? That sounds
30 to 35
right?
kids. Yeah, that's what we got this year. Because I also coached. I coached last summer, not this year, but last summer I coached a grade 9-10 team. And we actually made it to provincials, but we lost by 2 touchdowns. But so I'm very familiar with the Cougars system and how it works and the less attendance, I guess you would say, in summer.
Yeah. You get that with any sport, really. Like, I played a lot of soccer in the summer, and you get people that go on vacations and stuff. And, sometimes you just have a really hard time filling every position, right?
Exactly. And that was actually, you probably don't remember this, but in that grade 8 season that we were in, we started out really hot. We won 3 or 4 straight games. We were unbelievable. And then exactly what I'm talking about started happening.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up for practice. Kids just stopped playing, went on vacation, stuff like that. So now we started at 50 kids because back then more people played football.
See, that's why I was thinking the roster is bigger. I remember it being bigger than just 35.
Yeah. Well, we started at about 50 kids, and after injuries and all that stuff, we probably ended the season around 25, 23 kids.
Yeah.
So that shows you, summer football. And it's tough. It's frustrating for those who are the volunteers, the volunteer coaches and stuff and staff. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to tell yourself, this is also voluntary for the kids, and, that's what's most important. It doesn't matter if you win, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, these kids are showing up to have fun and for the social atmosphere and to be physically active. That's what we really need to promote when we coach.
For sure.
Is come here and be physically active and healthy, because that's really what's super important. Not so much winning. I'm not saying don't set goals and don't have a drive and stuff, but winning is the last thing that's important to me when I coach.
You can do both. You can compete and have fun. I think for a lot of people, competition is a part of the fun. For me, it definitely is. I hear about these leagues where they don't even keep score of the games, and it just, what's the point? Are we going to pretend the kids aren't keeping score in their heads? Come on.
Well, that's also a very controversial point because there are people on both sides of that argument. Usually those leagues, I forget what age that stops at.
Yeah.
But kids usually don't really care at a young age. They don't care if there's a score or not. It's more the parents and stuff. But it is kind of good to, what that might teach, I've heard these opinions, what that might teach is it might not teach people what it's like to lose, what it's like to have no said to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're always winning or it's always participation,
those are important.
Then when
lessons.
do you face failure, right? And it's really important to fail in order to succeed. So I think that's kind of definitely a good point. Trying to go on both sides of the argument right now with that.
I think when you get into a competition, a controlled competition, team sports, when you lose, the consequences sort of stop when you get off the field, more or less. Unless you get some serious injury, obviously, then take that home with you. But, if it's just a loss that you're dealing with, I think that those are sort of great opportunities to start coping and forming coping mechanisms to deal with any sort of failure.
Yeah, for sure.
An undesirable outcome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because you see lots of kids and even adults in sports too, and they just have really poor reactions when things don't go their way in the game. Who's the tennis player recently? Djokovic. He hit the tennis ball and it got one of the ball people right in the throat.
Yeah, I saw that.
So he got disqualified from the tournament. He had to pay a fine. I can't remember how much the fine was, but it was a pretty good chunk of change.
It's not like he meant to do it, right?
Of course not, but still, it's not good behavior for, especially for a professional who's supposed to be a good role model, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it reflects on all of your life. If you don't if you are given everything, like if everything you wanted, every toy you ever wanted, every thing, no matter the cost, is always given to you, and every job you ever wanted is given to you, every grade you've ever wanted is given to you, or you can never fail in class, like
Yeah.
actually have a failing mark, then like it doesn't really set you up great for later on in life, because once you're on your own and there's no longer that system that's giving you these
Oh
things,
boy.
then you have no idea how to cope. And people might not even know that they're like that, because that's just how they were raised, or that's just the interactions they had. But like if you've never faced failure, then how do you react when you face failure? How do you react when you're not given everything that you want? And it's almost better to like teach people at a very young age, like not like, I don't know, young, but definitely like when kids are young, like, okay, this is incorrect or
Yeah.
behavior. You can't do that. If you're constantly like, say like a kid is misbehaving and you just give them a lollipop every time they're misbehaving,
Well,
or that
that's
kid
positive
goes, I want
reinforcement.
this, that's positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
But that kid just knows, okay, if I scream really loud when my parents' friends are around, I get a lollipop, I'm going to do that every time.
Hell yeah.
You're not teaching that kid like, okay, it's not good to scream. It's kind of like, it's like, that's a very small little analogy there, but it's a bigger picture thing, because that's what you're actually developing by doing those things is somebody who will not know how to face adversity
Yeah.
when it's right in front of them. So
Life hits pretty hard. Like once you get out of high school, it really comes at you fast. Like, people totally treat you differently for sure. Like
yeah,
when you're in high school, when you're still a student and everything, people are really, I guess, sympathetic. Maybe would be the right word. And then once you're an adult out there navigating the world, there's much more competitiveness to other people with you. Like there's a lot less willingness to help. There's kind of like an expectation that you should be able to support yourself completely. Like should be 100% independent.
exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like there's other societies in the world where people are very much more centered towards collaboration.
Yeah.
You'll have like a living situation where it's totally normal for like 3 generations of people to be living together under one roof. Completely normal. But I mean, I was kind of leading into, I would say in North America, it's definitely more like a independent sort of society. Like you got to be able to do it all yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, you definitely see, even like province to province, you definitely see a change in the way, in the lifestyle of people, and then like certain drives and stuff. Like Ontario is like, I don't know, like because of Toronto and stuff, I'd like call it like the big apple of, like Toronto would be like the big apple of Canada, right?
Yeah, it's like the
Pretty
major
much.
commercial center.
Yeah. So like everybody here like is always working as quickly as they can and getting things done as quickly as they can, and like just super stressed out, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's such a competitive like economy and stuff, like to get jobs in and stuff like that. Whereas like if you go to other provinces, especially on the coast, depending where you are, it's very chillaxed, a more relaxed life. Like when things get done, they get done.
Yeah.
But that's because you don't have these massive economy, like people coming from around the world to work there and build it up, and like, you know, it's not like a powerhouse place.
You spent some time out west in Western Canada?
Well, I spent some time out east. I lived out east
right,
this
right.
year, yeah.
Okay, well, what
For a
would you
year.
say like was different about that?
Well, that's exactly what I just said. Things happened a lot slower.
Okay.
It was more relaxed.
Different culture.
Just, yeah, like things, like even if you had a project due, it was like hand it in when you want to hand it in. Whereas like Ontario, I went to university here, it was like, no exception, like no excuses.
Oh, you're 1 minute late?
Yeah,
sorry. I guess you should have planned for that in advance.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the lifestyle. And it's a very easy lifestyle to fit into if you are that kind of person.
It sounds pretty good to me.
It's a pretty relaxing lifestyle, right?
I could go
things
for some
get
of
done
that.
when they get done. Whereas here, things need to get done tomorrow. Or, no, yesterday. That's the term.
Right.
Things should be done yesterday or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely, I mean, whatever. I don't know what I'd prefer. I think I would prefer a good blend of both. Because I did notice out there, like, I'd be like, okay, let's get this done quicker or whatever. But that was the Ontario in me. But at
So
the same time, it's not that great to be
yeah,
stressed out all the time.
so maybe what you were experiencing was kind of like one extreme and then the other.
Yep. In
So
a
there's
way.
probably somewhere in Canada where there's like an in between that,
Yeah,
you
for
could
sure.
say. And then
For sure.
as to where that is, I'm not sure. Like I haven't really. The only province I've been to besides Ontario is Quebec, but like I've only really been to Gatineau, so I would hardly say I've
Quebec's pretty,
explored Quebec.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Gatineau's
it's literally just right across the border.
Yeah.
So,
Montreal would be fascinating. Like
oh
Montreal
yeah,
is very dense,
I would love to see
and highly
Montreal.
populated. So, and like a huge economy right there, very driven. So it'd be interesting to be
I heard it's very diverse compared to the rest of Quebec. Like you're more
Montreal.
likely to encounter people that are speaking English than you would in like other parts of the province.
Yeah.
Like you'd find it's more predominantly people speaking French in like Quebec City, or
Well,
the more inwards you go.
Yeah. I would actually say the more northern.
Yeah.
The more northern. It's like beyond Montreal, even more north, almost where New Brunswick, because
Near
the
the
edge of
border.
New Brunswick is very French. That's where the most French was, kind of, maybe a little bit behind. But yeah, like definitely like Gatineau's pretty English
In New
all the way to
Brunswick,
Montreal.
do they have a lot of signs in French in New Brunswick as well?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it
they
just
do.
in French or is it in English too?
It depends where you are. Like when you first come across the border, for like 20, 30 minutes, I'd say most of the signs are in French, but every single sign. So New Brunswick is our only bilingual country, or province, sorry. Our
Yeah.
only bilingual province, meaning that they have to have everything in both, like because they're French and English. Like Quebec does not identify as bilingual. They identify as like,
Yeah, like if you go there, they don't have to have
and
anything
then we
in
don't
English.
identify as bilingual because you have to be like a certain amount of.
But doesn't
well,
Ontario
both.
though? Because
We don't have like I don't know how much we have, but like New Brunswick has like entire cities that are French
okay,
and
yeah,
entire cities that are English, and then like a mix. So they're our only bilingual province. I'm not really sure what. I imagine Quebec would identify French, but
yeah.
it's
I
kind
think
of
they're more
funny.
identify as French than English.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Quebec is the most bilingual province. Like I remember reading a stat about that.
I
Quebec's
believe
more
it.
bilingual than
I
every
definitely
single one of
believe
our provinces, yet if they identify as French first, it's kind of fascinating.
And what's pretty cool as well is you see little pockets all over the country of different languages too. Like in Brampton, I think there's like a really large Punjabi community. So like there's a lot of people that speak Punjabi there. So like Canada's really changing quickly in terms of, what sort of multilingualism you can run into here. It's not just English and French anymore, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Ontario is definitely like the most diverse, I'd say, but
Especially
we're really not that
Toronto.
diverse.
Like, if
Toronto's actually not as diverse as
Really?
I thought it was. I forget the exact stat, but it was pretty disappointing when I saw the stat. I expected it to be more diverse,
Yeah, me
but
too.
it's not as diverse as we think it is.
So where would be the most diverse place in Ontario, would you say?
Well, it would probably be Toronto, but it's not as like whenever I thought diverse, I thought okay, like 80% diversity, like you know what I mean, like 80% versus 20%.
Ottawa's pretty diverse too. Like I know, like I went to
Yeah.
school there for a little bit for a semester, and I noticed. Well, obviously there was a lot of mix between English and French people, of course, because of the close proximity to Quebec.
There's a lot of French people there. Yeah.
Like because of the fact that there's so many different schools in the city. Like there's 2 universities, there's a college, and I think there's a French. I can't remember if it was a college or a university, but it's a French school, right? So there's basically 4 post-secondary institutions right there. Like, it draws in so many people from all over the world, like all these international students from
It's
these
also our
different
capital,
places.
right?
Yeah, true.
So
So
drive there too.
I mean, there's just incredible diversity there, especially in the school communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
We got a little bit off topic with sports, but I know you wanted to talk about concussions in sports
Yeah, I can
and what goes on with that.
quickly go through that.
Yeah.
So basically, what I like to talk about. So I've done some research in the past in university, and I helped present a bit when I was in teachers college on this. But basically, what I try to always bring is head injury awareness.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily specific to concussions. The focus is always concussions, but just blunt force to a head and how serious it can be. And we are actually getting better for the awareness, but there's kind of like no stoppage of getting better. You know what I mean? Like we always need to be upping our game because they're so serious.
Like we know what the problem is, but
Yeah.
we don't know the remedy for it, is what you're trying to
In
say,
a
right?
in a way, or we
Yeah.
just need to keep putting more legislation or whatever in to make things like even more productive or whatever. Because there is a whole process for dealing with head injuries, and if somebody has a concussion, and there's like these steps to it, and like
Right.
when to like basically they're sent home, and there's the contact with the parent, and then they have to have a doctor's note and things like that, right? But how many times is this followed is the real issue. Like
It's come a long way.
yeah,
For
and
sure.
where's the accountability? Like there, you are supposed to be accountable, but where, like, who is keeping track of the accountability of coaches and stuff who are witnessing those head injuries, right? Like, is
Yeah.
there like what is the next level to have an actual staff member to ensure that those
Maybe-
coaches properly enforce the protocol for head injuries and concussions?
Maybe just
No.
inspections of some kind. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, and then
You'd have to try things out and
Yeah.
see how effective they are.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I think the severity of head injuries. So why I want to like make more people aware is because I went through football and I suffered a lot of head injuries, and I suffered a lot of injuries that now impact me in my life. And I've been still pretty good off because I know a lot of people who, or I know there's a lot of people out there who are not as well off
Yeah.
with the injuries. So what I want people to envision is the brain. So our bodies are actually not designed for blunt, like hard impact.
Mm-hmm.
And there are animals out there, for example, like a ram. If you know what a ram is, they actually will fight with each other by running full speed at each other and hitting their heads together like this.
Yeah,
because,
it's pretty wild.
Yeah, because their heads are literally just a massive, solid piece of bone with a brain in it, right?
So is the brain attached to the bone? Is that why?
I don't know exactly how it works, but like their entire body, I think there's like a kind of like a cartilage that would really hold it in place and everything. Because I don't think your brain could necessarily be attached to your bone because of
I
the
don't know.
neurons and everything. There would have to be a muscular system around it. But our brains are in this tiny little shell. Like imagine it like an egg,
Okay.
because that's how delicate we are. This tiny little thin shell, which is our skull. And then our brains are held in the cerebral fluid, which is basically this brain like this, in the cerebral fluid, kind of just floating, right? And then there's obviously like your like your nervous system is attached and stuff. And I forget exactly, like your spindles are attached to your
Spindles,
skull and everything. But
So what are these
we are
spindles?
suspended. So spindles, I can't remember exactly what they are, but I believe they're what get really damaged when you get CTE. But
Right.
anyways,
Okay.
so imagine that just floating there. So when you get blunt force, or is my hand here? Blunt force
It's reversed.
on your head, right? That just is floating there, and it just bangs off the side. That's what causes your concussion. Your
Yeah.
brain actually banging off the side and almost like bleeding in a way, depending on the force, and inflaming. So that's where your concussion. A concussion is actually your brain inflamed in certain spots. And what people don't understand is just how easily that is done. You can whack your head off the ceiling and get a full-on concussion, right?
Yeah.
Because of how delicate we are. And then what people also don't understand is that you can get a concussion by torquing your brain stem. So not even by hit to the head, like a whiplash
Mhm.
or a blunt force on your brain stem to like directly on there can cause a concussion. It doesn't even have to be a hit to the head.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody with serious whiplash, concussion protocol should be the first thing to take into consideration. Now, why I want this to be really serious is that, and I'm basing this off the research done. I did a little bit of research outside of it, but if you've ever seen the movie Concussion with Will Smith,
Yeah.
he
I have.
plays the Dr. Amalu, and he was the main breakthrough for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, in the NFL. And there really is not enough research done on this. I don't know why. It's almost like he did everything and then some other people kind of joined in, and then it was kind of just left, almost like it's just, what can we do? This is all we have. But anyways, he did a ton of papers on this. And What he said is that every single person's brain is different,
Right.
in size, in shape, and in delicateness. So what we all believe is that, oh, you get hit 1,000 times in the head, you'll get chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a brain degenerative disease long term, which will basically like destroy your body and everything and cause you to go crazy, and you'll die eventually. So it's just not a good disease. So this happens from blunt force on the brain. But what people don't understand is that because all our brains are different, somebody can suffer one concussion and get CTE. One. So we believe that you have to get hit like 1,000 times to get CTE. Depending on the person's brain, somebody can literally have one concussion and get long-term damage from it, right? And also, like, there are, depending on the brain, thousands of hits will cause that long-term damage for another person.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a certain severity either.
No, not necessarily. Like, it's just the effect that it has on your brain, because those spindles, kind of like I was talking about, I don't know if it's the exact term, but basically they are part of your, I don't know if I think they're in the inside, but basically they will die, and that's where that brain degenerative disease starts. And your brain starts looking like older and older. Like when Aaron Hernandez, if anybody knows who that is in the NFL, he went to prison. Yeah, he went to prison for multiple murders. When he passed on, they opened up his brain, and they saw that he had like the brain of a 60-year-old or something. He had like the worst case of CTE they had ever seen. And this was after Amalu. So after all the research he did, after the like 10 different people that he opened up their brain and looked at.
Do they think that this brain injury could have had some sort of influence on his behavior in hindsight?
Yeah. Now, I have mixed reviews on it because I watched the documentary on Netflix and stuff to kind of learn about it. I didn't go outside of that, but there are theories, because chronic traumatic encephalopathy can cause like massive spouts of aggression where you don't really know what's going on, where you can literally act out. And basically that's what was happening with Aaron Hernandez, was that he was just freaking out on people. Like one of the people he killed was like his sister's boyfriend, like basically his brother-in-law or something.
I can't recall.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was just like, it didn't really make sense, right? So people have said that, but if you watch the history of Aaron Hernandez, he was caught up in like some bad stuff really early on in his age, and showed some aggression and stuff, and fighting, stuff like that. So I don't really know if it's CTE, but
it's hard to say. It's always hard to say. It's a very complicated story for sure. A lot of layers to it.
And like I said, like maybe Aaron Hernandez had that brain that I'm talking about that only needed one hit, and he got that hit back in elementary school, and he had CTE.
We really don't have a way of measuring that.
Yeah, but at the same time, CTE doesn't really kick in until like 20, 30 years down the road, so he wouldn't have had CTE at that time. But what people seem to believe is that you have to be in the NFL to get CTE. Like they think, oh wait, I didn't make the NFL, that's fine, I'll be fine. Or the CFL. Yeah. That's not true. Do you know how many hits you've experienced in college and high school and stuff? Like
even just in the workplace, like lots of people get concussions at work. It's pretty incredible. Sometimes people just aren't entirely spatially aware, and you hit your head off of something, like you said, it doesn't take much of an impact, and boom, there's a concussion right there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're one of those people who are particularly vulnerable to this CTE, then, you very could likely get this condition just from, working.
Exactly. And the reason that I am also bringing up this awareness, which is perfect for what Austin just said, because people seem to believe that concussions are only a thing of contact sports, and specifically like rugby and football
and hockey and stuff like that.
And like CTE and stuff, like head injuries, major head injuries. They really didn't discover CTE till they started looking into boxers, and they said, okay, it can't happen to anybody else. Yeah. So that's the kind of outlook that we have on head injuries. Oh, well, it happens in football and rugby, doesn't happen anywhere else. Well, the truth is, some of the most concussions actually happen in soccer from headbutting. They're not as severe because the impact isn't as severe, but like I said, with that brainstem impact and then that direct force, you imagine that ball in the sky coming directly on your head. that's going to shake your brain, man.
Yeah, for sure. It
That's
comes
gonna
pretty
cause
quick
that.
sometimes.
Yeah, so there's a high rate of head injuries in soccer, and then rugby, and then football, and hockey also has a ton of concussions. Now, that's a sport that I really like to focus on because
Hockey or which sport?
hockey,
Yeah.
because I feel like people seem to say it's like, oh, I'm going to put my child in hockey because it's safer than football. But that's not really true. Like,
Yeah.
let's break down the game of hockey. And by the way, if you don't know anything about this, I suggest you look up this name. I'm going to give it to you right now.
Yeah.
Daniel Carcillo. He was in the NHL. He was a fighter, and he actually was basically the face of the lawsuit. Nobody knew this happened. The lawsuit of hundreds of previous NHLers going after the NHL for CTE because they had it.
Right.
From fighting, from hits, from whatever. And like 200 of them went after it. And the final end was that if you actually tested positive for CTE, which isn't even really possible to do,
Can't
like,
you
it's
only
just
do it
symptoms.
after death?
You can only do it after death.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just symptoms of CTE. If you tested positive for that, the NHL would actually fund your rehabilitation. But it's kind of too late. But they didn't give them any money. It was actually a terrible end to the lawsuit.
So now if they die and they test their brain and it shows that they do have CTE, would their family potentially be compensated in some way?
I don't think that was part of the lawsuit. The lawsuit was like basically like, we'll pay for your bills and give you some money, but it was like nothing close to what they really deserved. Like nothing close to what the NFLers got out of their big lawsuit because there was more of them. But yeah, so look up that name, Daniel Carcillo. He was one of the driving forces of the lawsuit in the NHL. If you have never heard of that, the lawsuit actually just went through and whatever, and what is it, like the settlement was made in like 2018. So
Okay,
I mean, it's quite recent, but it started in like 2014, 2015.
It kind of sets a
like
precedent too, as well, right?
Yeah. So why I'm bringing up this NHL thing? Yeah, it definitely sets a precedent. But why I'm bringing up this NHL thing is because I want people to know that like hockey is a more dangerous sport for head injuries than we believe it is, and injuries in general. So when you strap on a pair of skates and you hop onto the ice, you can actually move about 3 times quicker than you can move if you're just running on foot. Like, it's insane. Like,
What's
how
the speed
fast
we're
you can
talking
go.
about?
I don't know the exact speed, but honestly, if you're listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's insane the speed that you can go on at skates, and you'd be like, yeah, this guy's right. So, anyways, you can move considerably faster. You're wearing a helmet that is about this thin with padding, which is not even close to a football helmet, which has about this much padding and actual intense concussion protocol like put into it in research.
Mm-hmm.
So you're wearing a helmet that thin. You're skating on concrete, basically. That's what ice is. There's no give to ice. If you hit the ground, if your head hits the ground, that's like hitting concrete at insane speed. And then you're landing into boards that have a very slight give to them, but are made out of a solid structure.
Yeah.
Right? You're getting pinned against boards. And that's the first thing that's going to make contact with your head or whatever hits it. And all this time, you're going 3 times faster than you can, or 2 to 3 times faster. I don't know exactly, but than you can if you're just running. And there's just so many things in play that are solid and dangerous in hockey, but people seem to think that it's like less dangerous than football or whatever, and that they're not going to put their kids in football, but they're going to put their kids in hockey. Like, if you look at injuries in comparison, I would feel like injuries are significantly more severe in NHL than in like professional hockey or hockey in general than they would be in football.
So I pulled up the average skating speed here actually just to get an idea of how fast these guys are going. And it says that NHL players can reach an excess of 20 miles per hour. And if we're talking about speed skaters, so like sometimes in the Olympics, you'll see these speed skaters wipe out and maybe, collide with something, which is always a scary thing to see.
Yeah.
They can reach speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. Wow. So in kilometers, that's 32 kilometers for the NHLers, 48 kilometers for the speed skaters. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's like seeing somebody going down rollerblades on a residential road passing a car.
Yeah.
Right? Like, exactly. That's crazy.
That's insane, because that's literally where we go. That's our speed limit.
Yeah.
So imagine like making contact with somebody while going for like always 50 kilometers an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
Bone to bone, right?
Yeah. There's actually like something like basically I want to say like obviously I'm trying to create awareness here, and football is extremely dangerous, but I'm trying to create the awareness of other sports too.
Yeah, they can all be pretty dangerous if you don't follow the right safety procedures and if you're reckless and not aware of your surroundings out there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I want to get across, is that it's really important to be like almost like overprotective in a way when it comes to head injuries. And I don't know why we've been so underprotective in the past. I think we kind of rank them as not like severe enough injuries or whatever. And it is difficult because they are hard to detect, but that's why we need to be overprotective. We need to be all about those symptoms. Because I even remember playing and like totally having a concussion, coming to the sideline, and the medic looking at my eyes and going, well, your pupils aren't dilated, get back in. And I'm like, I just blacked out.
Yeah, that's
just because that's not even, some people never experience pupil dilation if they get a concussion.
See, if you black out, isn't that automatically like at least a stage 3 concussion? Or like, what are the stages?
I don't
I'm not
know
super
the
familiar with
severity. I just know, I don't know.
Anytime you black out, I know it's pretty serious.
Yeah.
It's definitely not like just a minor concussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like, that's kind of like how things used to be. They're getting better. Like everybody's kind of getting trained on concussion awareness, but as the individual, you definitely have to be more strict on that, because it's kind of still left up to the individual to approve it, especially when we're talking about kids, because kids are reckless, right? Like I remember being a kid, and that's why I have all these injuries now, is that you would play through injuries, you felt invincible, right? You felt like you could do anything, your body could take on anything.
You think you're just gonna heal, right?
Yeah. So it's really up to the adults around us to be like, no, get off. Like I had a kid this year last year in football, like come off and be like, yeah, I have a lot of concussions and I'm pretty dizzy right now. But like mad at me when I wouldn't put him back in the game, like just furious.
He's gonna thank you later.
And it's like, but that's because we're getting like better on the awareness. But like I said, it is totally up to the individual, because there's really nobody like watching you going. Like it's not like a doctor in a procedure with like that many nurses around him. You know what I mean? Like what if like you had the doctor and he's just like, you know what, I know I'm taking out the gallbladder, but I'm just gonna leave it in. You know what? Nobody's gonna know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I took it out.
Right.
You know? Yeah. So like I guess, I don't know, what would be the next step? Like how would you make people and coaches and stuff accountable? Would you like have like a monitor of them on the
That's a tough
sideline, or? And I'm super passionate about this because I believe
it's a good thing to be passionate about.
Life. Yeah, it is definitely something. Yeah. It's food for thought.
It's oftentimes, well, at least it used to be, all too often overlooked. Like not a lot of people were looking at this thing until. What was that doctor's name you mentioned again?
Dr. Amalu.
Dr. Amalu. Wasn't it until his research kind of got out there?
Yeah. And people were after him for it during his research.
Especially the NFL, right? In the initial stages, that they try to do some kind of cover up. I'm not too familiar with it.
He's a very selfless man, Dr. Amalu, because he did not have to put his career at risk. He did not have to take all the heat. Like he used to get like death threats at his house and everything because he decided to go after the NFL, and they covered it up like huge.
They're a very powerful organization.
Yeah, exactly. But he is such a selfless person because he just kept pushing through that for what? Like he wasn't getting a huge paycheck at the end of the day. He was literally doing it because he was an incredible human who cared about the health of future people and like wanted to have people recognize that, like the guy had like multiple master's degrees, PhDs, like, and then he was like what's the person who works and looks at bodies?
Oh my gosh!
I don't know what's
called. I not think of this right now.
If you've ever seen the movie, you'd know. But he like basically would look autopsy, like he'd look and do autopsies. That's what he did of people after death.
I can't believe I can't think of the word for that right now. It's
it's a weird
coroner.
Word. Coroner, is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's a coroner.
Yeah. So basically, and it is interesting because like Amalu sparked the care for CTE, around the world due to him going after the NFL.
Mhm.
And then like what sparked Ontario to actually start enforcing like concussion protocol. And if anybody's heard of Rowan's Law, it was a girl in Ottawa who I believe suffered a concussion, was playing in like I don't know if it was a double header in rugby or something. Don't like quote me exactly, but
Okay.
She basically was put back into the game after having like a severe concussion and wasn't supposed to be playing or something, and she ended up dying.
On the field?
Yeah, like right on the field. And that's what kind of drove Ontario to be like, we need to have better concussion protocol. And it's really sad that that's what had to drive us there.
That's pretty.
But
Oh, I don't know how it can get much worse than that. Is somebody like an actual kid? How old was she?
she wasn't too old. I think she was in high school.
Like 16, 17, probably at the most. And
Yeah.
her parents are probably watching, right? And of course, all of the people who know her there, her teammates.
Yeah.
Very traumatic situation that was potentially avoidable, probably avoidable.
Yeah, Bennett
right awareness.
Omalu. That's the guy.
Bennett Omalu.
Bennett Omalu. Yeah.
And where is he from? He immigrated to the United States, didn't he?
Yeah. I don't know. I think so. Or maybe he was raised in the U.S.
I can't recall.
I can't remember exactly.
There was something, it went over his biography in the movie.
Yeah.
I did see the movie, but
Yeah.
it was a long time ago. So
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot of the details about his work or anything.
It should be like a mandatory thing.
It should be. It should. Like if anybody wants to, get serious about contact sports, they absolutely should have as much awareness as possible. Like,
Yeah.
every time you start a job, you take women's training, right? And
Yeah,
that's really not
exactly.
hard to implement. Like, why can't we do something similar to that in regards to head injuries? And
It depends on your
sports.
employment, right? Like teachers do. Like when I went through my training,
It's
we had
any job,
concussion.
man.
We had concussion training.
Oh,
so-
concussions, you mean?
Yeah, we had actual
Concussions.
concussion training, and
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to get into other employment. I
Could.
know it's super important for teachers because they're dealing with kids like firsthand and everything to know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely like something, and to like constantly be learning and learning the new things. And I don't know how you would really practice concussion protocol. I guess you would just have to memorize the symptoms and what they would look like.
Yeah.
Um,
It just would take time to get more familiar with it, maybe, as you see actual cases.
yeah, exactly.
It's just going to take time for the attitude around it to change. Like,
Yeah.
it's a slow process, but I think that we're definitely moving in the right direction for sure.
Yep. I hope we
Yeah.
keep moving forward.
Me too. Yeah, like it's good to have you on here, John. I appreciate you coming, taking the time to do the podcast with me.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
As you know, I'm pretty new to this, so a bit of a learning curve still, but I think that we did really well today.
Yeah.
So thanks
for
again
sure,
for coming
thanks.
on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem.
All right. Guess we'll see everybody later.
Cheers.